you can turn off your own camera if you don't want to be in the recording. So without further ado, and pinning you, Onryu, hold on a second. Onryu Kennedy.
Thank you, Kyoku. And thank you, everybody. It's very, it's great to see all of you, all your radiating faces. Though it's in Zoom, it's still a great gift for us to be present with each other. What I'd like to do is just begin with thank you to Dokai, the guiding teacher at Hokioji, the staff at Hokioji, the board members. I just really am grateful for your kindness and generosity and the invitation to offer what it is that I'm learning in relation to the Dharma and the teachings. In addition, I would like to offer gratitude to Katagiri Roshi and all the great practitioners at Hokioji, who some are our ancestors and some are very present today. In all beings, including the wonderful birds, the deer, even the rodents who some of us may not appreciate as much. It's a great gift to be able to practice at Hokioji, and though I haven't done that recently, the perfume lingers with me in that precious space. Before I begin, I would like to offer homage to all Buddhas and ancestors. May their wisdom be offered to all beings, including me. I offer homage to our teachers from India, China, Japan, Korea, and Sri Lanka. May their teachings be an expression in kindness through our engaged actions in real time. Homage to our family and friends. May this intimate connection ripple into the larger community and be an embodied way of love and joy. Homage to our Dakota and Anishinaabe friends and relatives. These nations have been the stewards of this place and all beings. May I continue to unravel the twisted karma of genocide in relation to Indigenous nations and in non-violent actions and by upholding the precepts. So I just want to speak for about a half hour. I want to make sure that I honor that, because I want to invite your voice into this conversation, responding to anything that I've said or anything that you feel is relevant to this conversation today. This is a collective conversation, and though the practice is individual in many ways, we are in this lived experience in this moment together, and it's together that we will be able to have any chance of alleviating our collective suffering. I want to admit this talk has been a process for me. in many ways, and I wasn't quite sure what was going on until I actually settled down and began writing, and it became clear to me why this talk was a little, all talks are dynamic, but some are more dynamic than others. And this particular one was had more dynamism in it for me. And I think part of it is because I, through what I've experienced, in my desire to share in a way that is appropriate, it creates a vulnerability. And I think that vulnerability is a vulnerability that we all experience and try at times to protect ourselves from. And I think what's important is to be able to express our vulnerabilities with each other in a way that connects us and that is safe, of course. So recently, I've been listening to the Dalai Lama and Bhikkhu's Bodhi, and they reminded me of how dynamic and complicated the conditions we are currently living in. The Dalai Lama spoke of the climate crisis and the need for people to realize our interconnectedness. He went on to say that war is not the solution. And this war is not just the war between countries. It's the war between communities, between states, within individuals. He went on to encourage us to realize we are brothers and sisters and cultivate warm-heartedness towards each other. And one of the words that he used was altruism. Altruism and warm-heartedness. When I hear the word altruism, it's kind of a step forward beyond compassion. That's just my view or opinion. Bhikkhu's Bodhi, earlier this year, spoke to the inequities that exist. The persistent poverty, land becoming uninhabitable, racism, police violence, environmental crisis, threats to democracy, economic inequities, and many other conditions of suffering on this earth. He presented ancient teachings from King Ashoka and Nagarjuna. One of the main points of his talk was that we will be forced into a situation of sufficiency because the conditions of consumerism has went beyond what this planet is able to sustain. And one of the questions that was asked is, what does enough look like? I just bring these conversations forward because I was struck with these Buddhist leaders bringing forward very difficult conditions in such a frank and understandable way, and using the teachings and bringing the ancient teachings into relevancy. I found it refreshing. The other part of the study that I've been doing is I continue to study Okamura Roshi's lectures on opening the hand of thought. And recently I listened and I'll get more deeply into this. Roshi was talking about the middle way of two extremes. What does that look like? What does the middle way of taking care of one's needs and meeting the needs of all beings? And how does one balance these needs to benefit all beings? And what is the individual and collective response to this middle way? And I feel that Buddhism offers many transformational practices. For me, it's an inside job initially, and extends out. And I'll explain what that means. Let me take a step back, a backward step. It seems to me that there are times in our lives when we experience what I call a deathing to who we thought we were in the conditions we are currently facing. This deathing it's weird because when we're in it or when I'm in it, I cannot see this. It offers an opportunity to excavate. Excavating is different than extraction and getting rid of. Excavating is the gentle uncovering of the self. What is not working? It's not a getting rid of. The Buddha never asked us to get rid of ourselves. I feel the Buddha asked us, just like Dogen, go into it. What is it? Look at it. When Mara came to the Buddha didn't say, get out of here, Mara. The Buddha said, I see you, Mara. I see you. So it's like excavating is uncovering. And I see you, self. I see you, karma. I see you. It's composting, it's deconstructing more deeply and more completely. It's endless. This deathing is ignited by significant loss of something or someone who is dear to us. A terminal illness can ignite a deathing. I'm sure that there are many examples. I'm just bringing forward what I consider kind of the big ones. The grief and the suffering are beyond words, and the heart is broken. I call this a wilderness experience. It's a pivotal time. It's the human experience and journey. The Buddha experienced this when he was under the Bodhi tree, and Mara was tempting him in all ways. I think Jesus experienced this in Gethsemane. I feel that Martin Luther King experienced this. Frank Foolscrow experienced this. Eleanor Roosevelt. I just offer these examples because it's the human condition. And to me, it offers the possibility to become more vulnerable and less fragile. This vulnerability provides a nimbleness and connectedness to what is actually happening into all beings. So I'm not making it up. Like, there's an example that's often used in Yogacara about perceiving a rope and thinking it's a snake and realizing it's a rope, and then exploring more deeply. It's not a rope, it's hemp. And then going even more deeply, it's not hemp, it's space. So we have the possibility, when we excavate the self in a good way, we have the possibility of seeing more clearly what's in front of us. I want to talk about Okamura Roshi talks about living by vow. And there's a beautiful story that I want to share. And I know I have about 10 minutes. But one of the things that I've been studying in Opening the Hand of Thought is Uchiyama Roshi's Living by Vow, and how living by vow is different than what Christianity considers sacrifice. Vow is not sacrifice. And I want to get more deeply into that, but I want to read to you what Uchiyama Roshi writes. I have spoken of Zazen as a religion and quoted several passages from the Bible. However, I should point out that living by vow is quite different from the religion of the Christian. For in Buddhism, there is no notion of sacrifice. What the Christian does in the spirit of sacrifice, the Buddhist does on the basis of vow. The spirit of sacrifice arises from first separating, objectifying I and thou. I is given over to the service of thou. But Buddhism looks at life prior to the division of I and thou. And in order to do this, we have to really go deeply, because what Uchiyama Roshi is saying is to go. Buddhism looks at life prior to the division of I and thou. Buddhism looks at life before the separation of object and subject. And we are always doing that. And if we are honest, we will say, yeah, I'm doing it right now. So I feel like this is an important distinction, because as a person who grew up as a Catholic and now as a converted Buddhist, I still have a martyr complex. It's in me, this need to save. And I want to acknowledge that that this is part of the sacrifice. If I sacrifice myself, then I am good. What Uchiyama Roshi is saying and what Buddhists, what our vow is saying is no. That is not it. Sacrificing yourself is not it. Living by vow is beneficial action for self and all beings. And the conditions are fluid. So what that looks like in this moment and what it looks like in the next are different. And in my Dharma position as a white Zen priest, what does that look like? That means that I, as a white Zen priest, need to decenter myself and invite and uplift other voices. So there's this beautiful story that I finally found. Okamura Roshi talks about it. And it's in the Mahaparinirvana Sutta. And it took me really until actually earlier this week to find it in the Mahayana Sutta, or Mahayana Parinirvana Sutta. It's in the chapter of sacred practices. And it's a story that is well known in Japan. And maybe some of you know the story too. But it's about a bodhisattva who was practicing in the Himalayas. And the bodhisattva doesn't have a name, but they call this bodhisattva Shinsan Doji. And the reason they call this bodhisattva that name is because he's practicing in the snow. The Himalayas are this called the Himalayas Hima Snow Alaya Storage. So it's the storage of snow. And Doji, meaning kid. This is a story that Buddha tells to Mahakashapa in the sutta. And so this person, this bodhisattva, is practicing in the Himalayas. And the gods are like looking at him and they're like, what is he doing? What's going on? I mean, he's all alone in the mountains. And is he in India? People practiced meditation in the mountains to be born in higher places, to become heavenly beings. So these gods are like, is he practicing to be a Buddha? Or Indra, one of the gods who was at this meeting, was like, or is he practicing to compete with me? Because even in the God realms, there's a hierarchy. And Indra's on top. So Indra's like, what's going on? Is he to be a Buddha? Is he practicing to be a Buddha, or is he going to compete with me? And there's a beautiful explanation. I don't have time to talk about it, but there's a beautiful explanation about bodhicitta in this sutta. How initially Indra's like saying bodhicitta is, so beautiful, but a lot of people, after a while, they give up, right? So what kind of person is this bodhisattva? Is he committed to this journey to be a Buddha, or is he competing with me, or is he going to give up? So they're having all these discussions. And then Indra just says, I'm going down. I'm gonna check this out and see what's going on. And Indra goes down and he starts chanting a gatha. And the gatha is, all things change. This is the law of birth and death. So this is the relative that we all know. Things arise, things perish. Things are born, things die. And this bodhisattva is like, wow, this is such a precious gatha, a precious verse. And he's like thinking, who is chanting this gatha? And he looks around and he sees this monster, because Indra has transformed into a Rakshasa, which is a flesh-eating monster. And it's kind of funny in a way too, because this bodhisattva looks up and he sees this ugly monster and he's like, is this true? Can this ugly being chant such a beautiful gatha? And then all of a sudden his mind is transformed and he's like, of course this monster can chant this beautiful gatha. Ugliness is just an appearance. And this bodhisattva looks up, sees this Rakshasa and says, can you chant, you chanted the first part of the verse, can you chant the second part? And this bodhisattva is like in wonderment, and this monster said, I'm sorry, I'm too hungry. I cannot chant this verse, the second part. I'm too weak. I haven't eaten. And the bodhisattva says, well, what is your food? I will offer you food. What do you eat? And the monster said, what I eat is the soft flesh of man, and what I drink is their warm blood. It is an unfortunate way that I sustain my life. I go around and I cannot find food to eat. That is why I cannot recite the second part of this gatha. And the bodhisattva said, tell me in full the verse, and then I will offer my body to you. After I hear the verse, I may die, but such a body is not good to me. It could be devoured by a wolf, a tiger, or an eagle. The body is the dharma of arising and perishing. I am committed to enlightenment. He's on the path and will trade it for the indestructible body, the dharma body. I'm like, wow, you go, bodhisattva. That's so beautiful. But the monster's like, kind of like me. The monster said, who would believe what you say? Who would give their body for 8 words? That's 8 Japanese words. It's 11 in English. The bodhisattva said, you are really ignorant. It would be like giving up earthenware for a 7-jeweled vessel. I will exchange this clay body for an adamantine body. It's like giving up pottery for a jeweled vessel. All bodhisattvas who wish to benefit countless beings study Mahayana and have perfected the 6 paramitas will attest to my sincerity. And all Buddhas, world honor ones in the 10 directions, they too will bear witness that I will cast away my body for those 8 words. The monster says, arising and perishing have perished. the Heart Sutra, right? There is neither ignorance nor extinction of ignorance. There is neither old age and death nor extinction of old age and death. Negation of suffering conditions to the groundlessness, where bodhisattvas are free from attainment and hindrances and rely on prajna paramita. So awesome, right? So he's talking about emptiness. Emptiness not in nothingness. Emptiness in interconnectedness. Emptiness on the front, the front side of the hand, interconnectedness on the back hand. So you can't have one without the other. And what happens is like the bodhisattva is like, oh, this is so wondrous. He said, wait a minute. He said, let me write this verse on the stones. Let me write this verse on the trees. Let me write this verse on the path. That is so beautiful, right? Because he's sharing it. He's sharing it with all beings, right? I'm like, that is so fresh. And then the bodhisattva gets up in the tree and jumps. And as he's jumping in space, Indra pivots, transforms from a monster into Indra and catches this bodhisattva. When I listen to the story, it's about the 5 skandhas. It's about the self. It's about taking care of our skandhas in a healthy way, taking care of ourselves in a healthy way. And when we support ourselves, we support all beings. When we nurture ourselves, we nurture all beings. When we live together in a way that is healthy and wholesome, we benefit all beings. I think for me, the story is full of teachings on many, many levels. And I'd be curious to hear your view of this story. And I just want to end with, I'm not going to offer myself to monsters that are beyond my capacity. I feel like I have offered myself to monsters, not in a way where I've sacrificed myself recently. I'm talking recently. I think in the past, because of my karma around Catholicism, it took a while. But I think recently, the monsters that I put myself in front of, like when I went to Washington, D.C., and I stood in my Dharma position with indigenous nations and was detained by the police of Washington, D.C. I stood in front of the monsters, but not because I was trying to kill myself. No, I stood in front of the monsters because for beneficial action. It benefited me because this is my practice. My practice is to stand in my Dharma position in relation to indigenous nations. And they asked for my help. And I said, yes, I will be present. And I was. So there's a discernment, right, that each one of us takes in relation to our Dharma position and in relation to who we are at this time, in this moment. And sometimes it's small actions, right? On November 8th, an action that each one of us can take in our Dharma position is to vote. It's so important, voting. It's how we express our sovereignty as citizens of this country called Turtle Island or the US. So I just bring that forward that it's an endless practice. And it depends on each one of us individually and also as a collective body. We can't do this alone. We need each other. So with that, I'd like to stop and invite you to please bring your voices into the conversation.
Okay.
I have a question.
Ah, hi.
Hi, Onryu, I'm married.
Yeah, I know you, Mary. Your heart is gold. I just want to say. So I know that we haven't had much time together, but the time we have had together, it's impacted me. So
Oh, well, thank you. Likewise. Likewise.
thank you.
I would like to ask you a question about something you said. Could you comment on living by vow? You said looks at life prior
Oh,
to the division of I and thou. Could you comment on that?
yeah. Okay. So thank you for bringing that forward. That is an aspiration. Okay. Right now, for me, living in vow is really about untangling my karmic self and composting my karma, right? My history, my family's history, my experience, right? Even my spiritual experience, composting that so that I am in composting, I'm composting my trauma, I'm composting my history, I'm composting my reactivity so that when I show up, I can show up hopefully as an adult, right? I'm not leaking my trauma everywhere. I'm not leaking my karma everywhere. I'm able to see the conditions as they are to my capacity, right? Because this living by vow is endless, right? It only has the capacity of what I'm able to have as a human being in relation to my vow, right? So, and also, it's that if I were able to actually see what is happening prior to the objectification of self and other, right? I'd be enlightened. I'm not even close to that. So I'm just trying to, I'm trying to do what I'm able to do with the capacity I have at this time. And I'm committed, right? I'm not going to go to the Himalayas, maybe in another life, but in this life, this is what it looks like for me. Is that helpful?
Oh. Yeah, that was super. Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for the question. It's important and it's an ongoing investigation.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Unmute.
Hi.
I don't know if you remember me.
I do.
Oh,
I remember you. You were the Tenzo for my ordination in 2012.
very good. Oh, yes. It's yes, I was, and you know, I've changed my name because I remarried, so thank you for remembering me. That's very touching. My question actually was the same as Mary's, but and it's just such a beautiful thought, also having been raised Catholic, this idea that we're not here to sacrifice but to live by vow is just so touching. But really, I've been away for quite some time, you know, COVID, and I had some illness problems, and it's just so nice. It's so nice to see you, and it's so nice to see Dokai and Kyoko, and I think Alan is in there. I see his name. So I just want to say good morning. It's just wonderful to hear where you are on your path. I think this was meant to be. Here I am. So thank you.
Well, thank you for your bodhisattva practice. I mean, beautiful. That, you know, this is what it looks like. And thank you. I mean, I remember you. I remember it was an amazing, amazing offering that you gave to us on that.
I did very little. But you know, just talking about it, I can hear those drums.
The tango drums, right?
Oh, it was just, and I remember you saying, you know, I'm having drums. I'm good. This is going to happen. That was fabulous. So thank you.
Thank you. It's good to see you.
Hi, Onryu. It's Julie Warner.
It's awesome to see you.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it?
Yes, it has.
Yeah, Onryu, you continue to provoke me.
Is that good?
So I don't have a specific question, but your phrases taking care of self versus addressing needs of others, deafening to who we are and our condition. You know, I'm just, I don't know what to make of it, but it's making me think a lot about our extreme privilege, materialism, particularly in our white society. And, you know, it's just, like I said, you're provoking me to think deeper, to go deeper, to do something with some of these phrases and maybe live them into reality.
They are our lived experience. if I can just say that, Julie,
Mhm.
we're not separate. And I think what happens is we've walked into a matrix has been created, and we need to take our agency and our sovereignty as white people who identify as white people.
Mhm.
Privilege doesn't get us, it gets us somewhere, but it's an illusion. It's gonna go. We're all gonna die. And that's the deathing. It's like these deathing experiences happen daily. And everything we have is gonna go. So what is the most important point in this moment? Do I want to be an asshole in this moment, or do I want to try to like let go of my clinging to myself and open up to what's happening? I mean, being an asshole in the moment may have its rewards, but in the long run, it doesn't work, right? So, yeah, I'm like, this is real.
Mhm.
And when Bhikkhu's Bodhi talks about sufficiency will be forced into sufficiency, some people are already forced into sufficiency. And I'm sorry, I have energy. Let me say that again. Some people are currently forced into sufficiency. You people in Florida, people in Puerto Rico, people in South America, Peru, Brazil, people right here in this country on reservations, the nations who are stewards of this country. So self-sufficiency, there are people already experiencing it, and we
Right.
can learn from them.
Right. And what does enough look like?
Yeah, isn't that a great question? Yeah, I like it too.
Thank you, Onryu. You're awesome.
Thank you. It's great to see you. Good to see friends.
I'm just going to be me as opposed to the host for the moment. I'm just really enriched, particularly living at Hokioji, by the word composting.
Mm.
It really is a wonderful example to live this close in nature with so little else going on except what's going on. It's easier to see it and concentrate on it. And there's just, I just love your bringing that into Buddhist practice. That's just a great gift. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of shit to compost.
And we get a lot of help with it down here. My personally favorite image recently was when I put very stale bread out on the compost pile, and it's not enclosed. And then I got to see the woodchucks who have dug impressive quarters sufficient to their needs underneath the garden, trying to get the entire loaf into the hole and into their house. And there was just something so real about that as an image. I mean, isn't that what we're always trying to do, is to get that whole loaf somehow or another? And the heck with anybody else. Thank you. You know I love you, but I'll say it out loud too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Those woodchucks also ate all of our squash. My garden.
They were unhindered in their practice.
I know.
Fearless.
One of my favorite times here at Hokyoji was when I lived here without electricity or running water. And so nothing went anywhere. You know, it's like, well, if you pooped, you got to take care of your poop. You know, it just couldn't flush down a toilet. You couldn't bring any electricity. If you want light, you got to light a little lantern. If you want heat, you got to burn some wood. And so, unfortunately, when I arrived, there was already a lot of wood cut, at least for my first winter. So that was like fortunate because I'm not a good wood cutter. And I don't know how to use a chainsaw that well. So that was already there. But it was interesting how you didn't pay someone to take away your garbage, or you didn't pay somebody to bring you any electricity. It was just all together, internalized. I mean, it was like you were just I don't know, it was a very unusual experience. So I had that for a couple of years. So not that I want to go back to it. It was quite a bit of work. Especially I remember carrying up 2 5-gallon buckets of water from the spring. And for some reason our water went out a number of years ago, and I tried to do that again. I thought, man, it's so much further to the cabin than it used to be when I was 30. Anyway, man, that was a lot of work carrying up 2 5-gallon. And I calculated how much water I used a week. And it was 22 gallons. And the one thing I did do is I walked into town to do my laundry. I wasn't ready to try to do my laundry by hand. So I walked into town and put a couple quarters in the washing machine, and then I also got a real greasy cheeseburger. Because all the rest of the week was just totally food left over from our practice periods. So I spent $7 a month on food. Anyway, okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you so much, Onryu, for your talk today.
Thank you.
Well, it sounds like,
Wait a minute.
wait, okay.
Yeah. So if no one else has any desire to bring your voice into this conversation, I want to offer something before we close. And recently I have had the opportunity to travel. And in my travels, I went into this church. And in this church, there was an exhibition from about Edith Stein. Edith Stein was Jewish, and she converted to Catholicism. And she was in the 30s. She was in the Netherlands, and she was a brilliant writer. If you look her up, she has many writings. She was a philosopher, as well as I consider her kind of a mystic, if I can use that word. And she made a decision. Her sister also converted from being Jewish to Catholicism. And they made a decision to go back to Germany during the war. And they were both killed at Auschwitz. I was one of the awarenesses that I've had recently is through these extraordinary experiences that seem dark and negative, and they are, there's a depth that comes out. And with Edith Stein, I was like, the depth of her practice, the depth of her capacity to use words in the expression of the inexpressible. So I just want to read, I want to conclude with this sentence, these two sentences that were part of this exhibition, because I was like, this is it for me. So this is what she wrote. And she does use the word God. I want to say that. So if that offends you, I invite you, put Buddha in there, or put eagles in there, wolves in there, or whatever. Or don't listen. That's an option too. Okay, so this is what she wrote. The higher the soul ascends to God, the deeper it descends into itself. The union takes place at the very core of the soul, at its deepest foundation. So I was like, you know what? It's worth it. It's really worth it to deconstruct the self and to really find the core of this life in relation to all beings, because our liberation is connected to each other. There's no escape. So thank you all for your presence and your time. It's been an honor.
You're muted, Kyoku.
Thank you. I was just so expressive there for a second. I don't think I'll be able to repeat it, but I have a few more things to do, but I want to thank you for your talk. It was moving and has been a true teaching for all of us, I'm sure. So what I still want to say, though, is we continue. And upcoming, we've got next week, our head teacher, Dokai, will be giving the talk. Next weekend, we have our Caring for the Land weekend. Always fun. We hope we're going to have a men's retreat. We had a lot of people that came last year, really thought it was wonderful, and were unable to come this year. So we're going to work on trying to spread the word on that, because it was such an extraordinary experience. It involved composting in a group, I think. And then in November, we've got a just sitting retreat. One of the sayings of those that come to that is, nobody can tell you what to do. So that's an opportunity to come and enjoy this place. We have a work weekend in November, and then of course we have Rohatsu in the first week of December. You know, and that we depend entirely on your generosity. So thank you. We are in good shape, And we just encourage you to continue to turn your generosity our way. And after that, I think we'll chant the 4 vows and then say goodbye to Onryu and this moment. Beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Delusions are inexhaustible. I vow to end them. Dharma gates are boundless. I vow to enter them. The Buddha way is unsurpassable. I vow to realize it. Goodbye for now. I hope we see you before the end of the year here.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Onryu.